which is pretty much the world's biggest white label provider of cloud-based music services. So Omnifone powers Sony's global music service, which is called Music Unlimited, Ream's global music service, which is called BBM Music, and also the service that I work for, which is called rara.com. So that's a service provider that builds, licenses and runs digital music services for other people globally. So not just here in the UK, but in over 27 markets around the world right now. So today, I just want to talk to you a little bit about licensing. There are a couple other people coming up in the program after me, so I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of who you need to speak to if you're thinking about building a music service on mobile or on web or another platform. Who you actually need to phone up if you wanted to actually license music and provide a legal way for people to consume music. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the technology involved and the things expected of you if you're actually building a music service which is unlimited. So one of the points that Kim touched on in her presentation was about if you're building an app, you're building a mobile app, and within a mobile app you may have some music that you want to license. Now, there are a number of different ways, and also within a website, I guess, there are a number of different ways in which you can provide that music to the consumer. And these all come into play when you're thinking about building a digital music service and licensing a digital music service. And in terms of licensing, one of the things that you need to understand is the various different options that are available in the marketplace right now, and if you are building something, what you wanted to include in that proposition. And then you have to take that to the music rights holders. So as you can see on the screen there, you've got everything from a 30-second track preview to a la carte, which is your traditional MP3 download, which you can see on iTunes, Amazon, and services powered by 7 Digital. And then you get track bundles within that, which can actually be subscription or a la carte. And then you go down into the more sophisticated and slightly more technical, but increasingly the most popular form of music consumption, which is streaming services and DRM download services. And they're usually subscription-based. That's the profitable end of the market at the moment. Maybe not the most popular yet, but it's getting there. And then the various different options underneath that. So how are those monetized? Are those pre-licensed services, where you're taking the cost of a subscription, taking that cost and bundling that cost into the price of something else? So that could be you're selling a consumer electronics device like a games console, and that games console could come with a year's worth of music access, but the cost is hidden to the consumer in the cost of the device. That's what Nokia did with a service called Comes With Music a while ago. Sony Ericsson, when they were actually in existence, did that with a service called Play Now Plus as well. And then you've got ad-funded services. An interesting point to note about ad-funded music services at the moment, there aren't any in existence anywhere in the world that are profitable right now. So if you're thinking of building an ad-funded music service, please do your research carefully and think about that before you take that option. Then there are the freemium services. Freemium services are using a combination of ad-funded and subscription usually, and the game there is to tempt people on to use a service for free and then engage them and get them to convert to a paid user. And that's what you're seeing companies like Deezer and Spotify and Simfy in Germany and others do. Okay, so in terms of labels then, I just thought I'd run down, if you're building a digital music service and you wanted to license it properly, everyone talks about the labels and licensing of the labels. So I just thought I'd run through who they are and the main indies as well. There are a lot more independents than this. I've just listed a few here. But obviously you've got 4 major labels. Obviously EMI has just been sold subject to approval to Universal on the label side. EMI have done something very, very interesting that might be of interest to some of the developers in the room, which is the Emi Open Initiative, which is EMI has actually looked at the way that app development's going and is able now to offer individual artists, including artists like Gorillaz is one of the latest artists to sign up to this initiative, and give rights to app developers to use that content within apps. So it's easier to license for a small developer rather than going and trying to speak to all of these different labels to get all the content. You can go to EMI for their Open Initiative if you're an app developer, and you can get specific chunks of content that you can use within apps legally, which is great news. And then if you look down the list of the independents here, these are, if you like, some of the bigger independents, and then the smaller indie labels will aggregate up into these larger companies, and digital music services, like the one that I work for, will actually do deals with some of the independents on the list here. So what's not talked about so much is the other two sets of rights holders. So when you're licensing music services, you're not just licensing with the major and indie labels. There is another set of rights holders, which are the publishers, and then there are the collection societies as well. This makes licensing digital music services, especially when you're doing it globally, not just in one market, but in, say, 20 markets, quite a time-consuming, complex thing to do. And that's why actually only a handful of companies have done it so far. So on the major label publishing side, again, you've got all of the main guys represented there. EMI, subject to approval, is going to Sony. So that group of 4 is being squeezed down to 3. It's possible to do pan-European publishing deals with those majors and a range of other societies, including PRS for Music, Gamer in Germany, Sagai in Spain, SACEM in France for French repertoire. And then you have the collection societies. I've just listed a few here. This isn't a complete list by any means, but just to give you a flavour of the fact that within digital music services, if you're thinking of licensing these things and you wanted a complete catalogue of music for every market, you have to go to all of these guys and you have to do licenses with all of them. And then there are other agencies in the US that music services can have the option to license through as well, which include Sound Exchange, Harry Fox Agency, and then the last one as well, Music Right Reports. Okay, now onto technology. Now, apologies for the slightly complex nature of this, but these are all the different elements that are required, and there's a very top-line diagram of if you were building a streaming music service. These are the kinds of things that you'd have to build into your service. So you have to do the licensing to start off with, you have to be able to ingest content, receive and ingest content that comes in from the labels. You have to cleanse that content, you prepare that content, so the content will typically come into you in a range of different file formats, maybe not with all the right metadata. You have to match the metadata to the content so that when you push that out into a service, you get a track, you get the artwork, it's named correctly, etc. And then you've got content delivery, publication, you have recommendations functionality. Sometimes in some services you have community features, sometimes there are editorial features, so artist biographies. All of these things are included in some of the services that you see today. And then there's the actual platform, so the platform with which this works and the various different device formats that your service works on. So today, most of the digital music services in existence work on 2 platforms, and that is PC and mobile. However, increasingly, that's not where consumers are listening to music. Traditionally, people listen to music on the phone, at home and in the car. And we're starting to see more and more services and service providers target those areas. So you'll start to see digital music services be brought into the car, so you'll see more more service providers do deals with car manufacturers in the next year or two. You'll see more stuff coming into the living room through connected stereos and things like that as well, and connected TV. And then in terms of metering and reporting, another important thing to think about with digital music services is for a streaming music service or a DRM download music service, whatever it happens to be, you have to actually report on plays to rights holders. You'll have seen in the news probably that here in the UK, the official UK charts company's just put out its first plays chart. That's also happening in the States in the near future. So the popularity of streaming has exploded over the last year or two, and now we're getting to a point where that's being there's actually a chart to represent those plays, but as a service provider, or if you're building an app and you want to have streaming within that, you've got to report back to the rights holder how many times your customers have actually played any individual track over 30 seconds, which is a qualified play. So you need that content reporting, metering technology within the services that you build. And then there's things like codecs, so what kind of codec you're using. Is it a Dolby Pulse file, is it an AAC file, is it MP3 file, the bit rates, which DRM for which devices. These are all things that need to be taken into consideration. And then finally, the route to market. So bearing all that in mind, and bearing in mind the complexity of A, licensing a music service, and B, bringing a music service to market, if it is a subscription-based or a streaming music service, you've got three options really. You can either do it yourself, and we've seen with companies like Nokia who have had a go at doing this with Comes With Music. It's quite a costly exercise, we estimate, somewhere in the region of $300 million to build a streaming music service that works on PC and works on phones. And is a global service. And then you've got, if you don't want to spend that much money up front, or if you wanted to take a different route, there are other options available. So there are white label service providers out there. If you are looking at a straightforward download option, which is a great option for app developers, so for instance, you could go to a company like 7 Digital, and they would actually be able to provide you with an a la carte download store, which is a white label thing, which is already developed, already licensed, and you can put your brand on it. If you wanted a bespoke white label solution, which is using someone else's platform, you could go to a service like a company like Omnifone, which is what we've done, and there you're using an existing platform which someone spent a lot of money, millions of dollars investing already. You can put your brand on the front, pick and choose which functionality you want in the service, and they will actually help with the licensing as well. And then there's co-branded. So this is increasingly what we're seeing in the marketplace is companies and brands that want to get into music but don't necessarily want to get involved in the technology at all, and then those companies simply just partner with an existing digital music service provider. So those are the options available today, and that ends my presentation. Any questions? All right, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Applause, please.